Another deep dive. This time we're going to dig into something that, well, it can be a bit of a minefield, especially if you've ever had any health issues.
Yeah, we're talking travel insurance, but specifically when you have what they call pre-existing conditions.
And to help us navigate this, we've got a fantastic guide we're going to be using. It's called The Ultimate Guide to Travel Insurance for Pre-Existing Conditions from My Insurance Advice UK.
Published June 1st, 2024.
Right, so June 1st, 2024. Now, when we hear pre-existing conditions, what exactly are we talking about?
I think a lot of people assume it's something very serious,
Like a chronic illness or something.
Exactly. But it can actually be a lot broader than that.
The article even mentions things like if you've had surgery recently.
Oh, absolutely.
Or even, if you're just taking regular medication.
That's right. Anything that a doctor's been keeping an eye on, even if you feel perfectly healthy right now.
So it's not just about how you feel at this moment, but your medical history.
Your history, yeah. And that's where things can get a little tricky with standard travel insurance policies.
Oh, so...
Well, those policies are often designed with, let's say, a healthy traveler in mind. So they might have these exclusions.
Exclusions mean...
Literally clauses that say, nope, we're not covering that, if anything happens that's related to your pre-existing condition.
So let me get this straight. You could be in, say, another country, need medical attention, and your insurance just says, tough luck.
It's unfortunately a very real possibility. And it can be especially risky in countries with, very expensive healthcare systems.
Oh, I see. It's not just about the inconvenience, but a potential, financial disaster?
Absolutely. You think about things like ambulance rides, emergency evacuations. Those costs can be, astronomical.
And it's not just the money, is it?
No.
Trying to navigate a whole different healthcare system, maybe you don't even speak the language.
Look, a nightmare scenario.
All while you're dealing with a health issue, that's a whole other level of stress.
It is. And even finding the right insurance in the first place can be a real challenge. There's so much jargon, so many different policies to sort through. It's easy to feel completely overwhelmed.
Okay, so clearly we need a different approach here.
We do.
The article talks about this idea of specialized travel insurance for pre-existing conditions.
Right.
What makes these policies different?
Well, these policies are designed with pre-existing conditions in mind from the start. They offer much more comprehensive coverage, and it's all about understanding the specific risks you might face while traveling.
So instead of a one-size-fits-all, it's more like, a tailor-made safety net for your individual health situation?
Exactly. Let's break down some of the key areas these specialized policies usually cover. One of the biggest ones is emergency medical treatment. That includes things like hospital stays, surgeries, doctor's visits, even prescription medications you might need while you're abroad.
Wow, just knowing that those costs are covered would take such a huge weight off your shoulders.
Right. And then there's emergency evacuation coverage. Imagine you're in a more remote location. Maybe the local facilities aren't equipped to deal with your specific condition.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a problem.
This coverage ensures that you get transported to a facility that can help, potentially even back home if necessary.
It's like, having a medical guardian angel looking out for you?
Another crucial area is trip cancellation and interruption coverage. This protects you financially if your health forces you to change your travel plans.
Okay.
So that might be a flare-up before your trip even starts, or if you need to cut your vacation short.
So you're not losing all that money on non-refundable flights or hotels if something happens.
Exactly. And some policies go even further. They may help with managing chronic conditions while you're traveling, or they might even offer pre-trip consultations with medical professionals.
To make sure you're really prepared.
Exactly.
These specialized policies sound amazing, but how do you even find the right one? There are so many options out there.
It can feel that way. But the article gives some really good tips for navigating this whole process. The first one is simple. Be honest.
Honest about?
About your pre-existing condition. Don't try to hide it. I know it might be tempting to, maybe avoid a higher premium.
Yeah, I can see that.
But if you don't disclose your condition and something happens, they can void your entire coverage.
Oh, wow.
So you could end up thinking you're covered, but then your claim gets denied.
Because you weren't upfront from the start.
Exactly.
It's like, what's a good analogy? Building a house on a shaky foundation, one strong wind, and the whole thing collapses.
I like that. The next tip is to really look for policies that offer what they call comprehensive coverage.
But comprehensive can mean so many things, right?
It can, and that's why it's important to really understand what they mean by that. It should mean that it covers a wide range of potential issues related to your pre-existing condition. not just the bare minimum.
So don't just settle for a policy that kind of skims the surface. You really have to dig deep and compare.
Exactly. Comparison websites, those online tools, they can be really useful here because they'll help you filter policies based on your specific needs.
So you're not wasting time looking at options that aren't relevant to you.
Exactly. But don't just rely on those websites alone. Remember to read the fine print of each policy very carefully.
I know, it's like deciphering a secret code sometimes.
It can be, but those tiny details can make a huge difference in what's actually covered. And another tip from the article is to consider specialist providers.
Specialist providers.
There are insurance companies that focus specifically on travelers with pre-existing conditions. They have a much better understanding of what you need and often offer policies with, frankly, better coverage options than you'd find with general providers.
It's like finding a doctor who specializes in your condition, right? They have the expertise to give you the best possible care.
Exactly. It can make a big difference in feeling confident and secure when you're traveling.
So we've done our research, found a policy we feel good about. What else can we do to prepare for our trip and make sure everything runs smoothly?
Well, the article also has some great practical advice for traveling smart with a pre-existing condition. And the first one, this might seem obvious, but it's crucial. Never travel without your essential medications.
They're like your passport at that point, right?
They are.
Yeah.
Pack enough to last for your entire trip, plus a little extra in case of delays.
Good point.
And keep them in their original packaging with a copy of your prescription, especially if you're traveling internationally.
Smart.
Another important tip is to keep a medical ID card or wear a medical alert bracelet.
Ah, okay.
That can be a lifesaver in an emergency, especially if you're unable to communicate your medical needs for whatever reason.
Like a mini medical record on hand at all times.
Exactly. And before you go, it's always a good idea to research healthcare facilities at your destination. Identify the nearest hospital or clinic, check if they accept international insurance, and keep their contact information handy.
Like scouting out the terrain before you go on an adventure.
Exactly.
Knowing where you can go if you need help. Okay, that's really practical stuff. But beyond the logistics, what about just managing your health on the trip itself?
Well, again, this might seem obvious, but staying hydrated and rested is crucial, especially for those of us with pre-existing conditions. Travel can be tiring, so make sure you're drinking enough water, getting enough sleep, and not pushing yourself too hard.
It's about giving your body that extra TLC it needs, even when you're in a new and exciting environment.
Absolutely. And don't forget to monitor your health closely throughout your trip. Pay attention to any changes in your symptoms and don't hesitate to seek medical attention if anything feels off.
Be your own advocate. Right?
Precisely. Now, before we wrap up this part, there's one last bit of advice from the article that I think is often overlooked, and that's familiarizing yourself with local medical practices and emergency procedures.
Oh, interesting. Why is that so important?
Well, healthcare systems can be very different from country to country. Knowing how to access care in a different system can be really valuable, especially in an emergency.
It's like learning a few key phrases in a foreign language, right? It can help you get by even if you're not fluent.
Exactly. That knowledge can be really empowering. It gives you a sense of control.
Especially in a potentially unfamiliar environment.
Yeah.
This has been so helpful. We've covered so much already, from the ins and outs of specialized travel insurance to practical tips for preparing for your trip and managing your health while you're away. But we're not done yet.
Not at all.
And we're back for part 2 of our deep dive into travel insurance for pre-existing conditions. In part 1, we really got into the nuts and bolts of finding the right policy and all that. But now I think it's time to get real. What happens if, despite all our best efforts, something does go wrong on our trip?
Yeah, that's when knowing how to actually use your insurance becomes really important.
Oh.
It's like having a fully stocked first aid kit, but no clue how to use any of it.
Right. It's one thing to have the tools, but you got to know how to use them.
Exactly. So let's say you're abroad. You have your specialized travel insurance. It's safely tucked away.
Yeah.
What are the first things you should do if you need to make a claim?
All right. So first things first.
The most important thing is to contact your insurance provider as soon as possible.
Okay. Got it.
Don't wait till you get back home and you're, drowning in paperwork. Most insurance companies have these 247 emergency helplines.
Oh, that's good to know.
So you can reach them from pretty much anywhere.
It's like having that emergency contact number programmed into your phone. You hope you never have to use it, but it's there if you need it.
Precisely. And when you do call, be prepared to give them a lot of details.
Like what kind of details?
Your policy number, of course, what exactly happened, the nature of the medical emergency, contact details for any doctors or hospitals you've seen.
So it's like putting together a puzzle for them. They need all the pieces to get the full picture.
Exactly. And the article also mentions this. Keep all receipts and documentation.
Oh yeah, all that paperwork.
Everything related to your medical expenses.
So it's like building your case, right? You need the evidence.
Think of those receipts as your proof. Don't lose them. Now, I know some people might be thinking, what if there's a language barrier?
Yeah, what if I'm in a country where I don't speak the language very well?
That's a valid concern. It's definitely worth checking if your insurance company offers multilingual support.
Oh, that would be so helpful.
Some of them do.
Yeah.
And it makes a huge difference to have someone who can understand you and really advocate for you.
It's like having a translator right there with you.
Exactly. And even if your provider doesn't offer that, technology can be a big help these days.
How so?
There are some great translation apps and services that you can use.
Oh, right. In a pinch, that could really come in handy.
Absolutely. Here's another tip. Document.
Okay, like what do you mean by that?
Take notes on every conversation you have with the insurance company.
Got it. Keep a journal of your symptoms, any treatments you receive. And if you can, take pictures or even videos of any injuries or the medical facilities you're at.
So it's almost like being a journalist, right?
Yeah,
Gathering all the facts and details.
precisely. That way nothing gets lost, you know?
Literally or figuratively. And what if you run into problems during this whole claims process?
Well, don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Be persistent, follow up with them regularly, and if you need to, you can always seek advice from a consumer advocacy group or even a legal professional.
Wow.
Remember, you have rights as a policyholder.
It's like being your own lawyer, making sure your voice is heard. So we've talked a lot about the practical stuff, but, traveling with a pre-existing condition, it can also be emotionally challenging.
Oh, absolutely.
Did the article talk about that at all?
It did touch on the importance of, emotional well-being, self-care, really, because all that planning, navigating a trip with a health condition, it can take a toll. It's like you're packing an extra suitcase full of worries along with your regular luggage.
That's a great way to put it. It's so important to be kind to yourself, listen to your body, and don't be afraid to adjust your itinerary if you need to.
So give yourself permission to slow down, take breaks.
Absolutely. Focus on enjoying the experience, not just checking things off a list.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And remember, you're not alone in this.
Yeah.
Millions of people travel with pre-existing conditions. Connecting with those communities, those online support groups, it can be so helpful.
Right. You find people who really get it.
You find your tribe. And they can offer support, advice, encouragement.
Yeah. Maybe even some tips they've learned along the way.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of a positive attitude. Believe in yourself, embrace the adventure, and focus on the joy of experiencing new things.
That's great advice.
Traveling with a pre-existing condition, it might require a bit more planning, a bit more preparation.
Yeah.
But it's totally possible to have amazing travel experiences without, compromising your health and well-being.
I love that. So much great information here. We've gone from the nitty-gritty details of insurance policies to the emotional side of things and finding your travel tribe. But of course, our deep dive isn't over yet.
We've got one more part to go.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We spent the last 2 parts really digging deep into travel insurance for pre-existing conditions. We've talked policies, practical tips, even the emotional side of things.
We've got a lot.
It has. But for this final part, I think it's time to shift gears a little bit. Talk about something a little more inspiring.
I like that.
Because it's one thing to discuss the technical stuff, the logistics, but it's another thing entirely to hear from people who are actually out there living these experiences.
People who prove that a pre-existing condition doesn't have to, hold you back from seeing the world.
Right. And, even though our source article today didn't really feature any personal stories, if you look online, there are so many travelers out there sharing their experiences.
Oh my God, there are tons.
People with chronic illnesses, disabilities, all sorts of health conditions. They're exploring the world, sharing tips, building these amazing communities.
It's really inspiring. And what I find really interesting is how many of these stories emphasize the importance of, adaptability, creative problem solving. Take, for instance, someone with dietary restrictions.
Okay.
They might become experts at researching restaurants beforehand, finding grocery stores, or packing their own snacks.
Right, so they can eat safely no matter where they go.
Exactly. Or someone with mobility challenges. They might discover a whole new way of traveling.
How so?
Slower travel, maybe. Choosing destinations that are more accessible. Or they might seek out tours and activities that are designed for their specific needs.
It's like instead of focusing on what you can't do, you start thinking about what you can do, right?
Yeah. Exactly. You find those workarounds. And of course, we can't forget about technology.
Oh yeah, technology's a game changer.
It really is. There are so many apps now that can help you find accessible transportation, accommodations, attractions. You can even connect with local support services. It's amazing.
It's like having a personal travel assistant in your pocket.
And then there's the power of, human connection. Talking to other people who have similar conditions, sharing tips and advice, it can make a world of difference.
It's like finding your tribe, right?
Exactly. People who understand your challenges and celebrate your successes. So, to anyone out there who's maybe feeling a little hesitant about traveling with a pre-existing condition, I want you to know that you are not alone.
You really aren't.
There are so many resources available. There are communities waiting to welcome you.
And there are people who have done it before you, showing that it's absolutely possible.
Travel should be accessible to everyone, no matter what. It's about exploring the world on your own terms, at your own pace, and in a way that makes you happy.
And that happiness can come from so many things, right? It could be the thrill of adventure, the peace of nature, connecting with different cultures, or simply the joy of pushing yourself a little bit, embracing something new.
Absolutely. It's about expanding your horizons, creating memories that will last a lifetime.
So to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to dream big, plan wisely, and never let anything hold you back from experiencing all that travel has to offer.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.